you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning and welcome to the May the 31st, 2022 edition of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. We start off by saying thank you for listening to today's program and for your listenership throughout the years. Thank you again very much. To get in contact with the show, you know the numbers, but we have new people calling in all the time. This is the number, 516-453-9921. You know the drill. When you call that number and they answer, make sure that you give your name to the call screener so that I could recognize you. And then if you have a question or VGQ, we're asking, please, ma'am, please, short. Please, ma'am, please, sir, to keep it short so that we can get a good flow to the show. Thank you for doing that. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and it will go into a rotation and will be read at some point in our broadcasts that are upcoming. And the last thing you could do if you want to join the chat room, you can go to blogtalkradio.com. When you do that, you want to go to programs, and you can click on the Produce Justice show or program. And then when you click that on, there's an icon for the chat, and you can enter into the chat. And some very good topics in the chat room. I must caution you that anybody that does go in there, you have to be clear, because the chatters, they do research. They help me, as they did last week on something that happened and the exposure of somebody who was being, let's just say, less than honest. But it's okay. That's all right. That is to be expected in the global system of white supremacy, because it is a system. It's not a person. It's a system. But keep that in mind. Okay. I think that's it. Okay. All the material that you hear that Mr. Fuller will speak about can be found in his book. The long title is The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. He will talk about that. It's also referred to as the Code Book, and you can get all this by going to producejustice.com, past shows, and upcoming events, particularly if Mr. Fuller is going to be on the Carl Nelson show. Right now, we don't have confirmation of that, but when he does, then we'll let you know, and then I will also let my listeners on my page know that, so we can all get a good listen to what Mr. Neely Fuller has to say. Okay, with that being done and on out the way, let's say this. Let's do this. This is important. If you are a first-time caller, when you call this number, make sure that you will tell the call screener, but the call screener will know that too. And you will get a special area that we have set aside for first-time callers only, that you can get on and ask your question to Mr. Fuller. Okay, with that being said, let me introduce Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. to some, present to others. And we have created a topic that Mr. Fuller will speak about here, and here it is, the thoughts and expressions of Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay, you're still learning. To start today's program off, the 31st of May, 2022, what are your thoughts and expressions that you have for us this morning?
Well, I was told that a lot of people are thinking about the shootings, and I would just say what I've been saying for some time here. And you can put it under the title of death worship. It's in the system of white supremacy. Death is worshipped. Death is a religion of the system of white supremacy. White supremacy meaning mistreating people on the basis of color, dominating and mistreating people on the basis of color. And it's a system of white supremacy that covers all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And some people have said I could have added health, which under compensatory logic, a person can add as many categories as he or she sees fit, whatever works for the individual person. So a lot of people associate trying to cure people of committing violence with health by saying that a lot of people who are doing these violent acts, shootings, what they call mass shootings, that's a term that can be studied too. What exactly is a mass shooting? If one person is hit, that's a mass shooting by gunfire, either by accident or deliberately. That's mass for that particular person. So, but in the system of white supremacy, body counts do matter. And people almost look forward anxiously to what's the body count. That's almost like a slang expression to kind of edge it on. I think I first heard it during what is called the Vietnam conflict. What's the body count for the day? Well, we think it was at least 700 over the entire area where the war is going on, where the heaviest fighting is going on. Well, now what was it last week? Well, it was 1,300 last week. Well, now, is it 700 this week? Well, we got to ramp that up. At least 2,000. That's what we consider a good week. And so it's the same all over the world now in what you call school shootings, theater shootings, church shootings. What's the body count? Oh, well, it's reported that 12 people were hit, but I think only 3 of them died. Well, I heard something different. I heard 6 died so far. Well, keep up with it. And people somewhat are geared their minds to anxiously wait to see if, 13, 14 people hit. Did all of them die? Well, that's news. Ramp it up. Keep checking. Check all the hospitals. Check all the wards, hour by hour. See if anybody else died. And really, in this death worship culture, they'll say, if some reporter comes on 6 days, a few hours later, and say something like, well, we've checked the hospitals, and those were rumors.
a lot of rumors were put out about the death count. Actually, 14 people were hit, but not seriously, and none of them died. Now that 4 or 5 hours have passed, and some of them will be in the hospital for a little while, but most of them have been discharged. Actually, nobody died. Everybody thought this was a mass shooting. And really, tell the truth about it, a lot of people who are used to body counts, thinking in that vein, will be disappointed. Oh, shoot. I mean, they was all shot. Most of them were discharged from the hospital after a month. And only 3 of them are left in there now out of 14 people. Oh, well, that, and they're not going to say it, but that's kind of disappointing. That's not news. That's, shot, nobody died. Mass shooting, somebody's supposed to die. Nobody died. At least half of the 14 should have died.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way people think. Why? Because we are taught that way in the system of white supremacy, truth be told. So what to do about it? Because codification, this program is supposed to be about what do you do about the mass shootings? Stay away from gatherings of any kind. It's the best you can do. Of course, if you have to go to the grocery store, you have to go. You have to go to hospitals. You have to go.
Mm-hmm.
But always, if you do go to a football game, whatnot, look for things that happen that shouldn't happen, because it's going to continue. Why? Because in the system of white supremacy, all of these quote unquote weapons of mass destruction are put out here for just that purpose, mass destruction. But really it's supposed to work against non-white people worldwide, on a worldwide schedule. So the guns and so-called weapons of mass destruction are going to continue to be produced and distributed, because you've got to have this all over the world. Now, if a lot of white people get killed, well, they consider that to be, and this is a military term, collateral damage.
Yes, sir.
And that's going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you're out in a crowd of any people, whether it's, even if it's all black people, particularly if it's all black people, you can expect death, because black people have been taught to worship death in the system of white supremacy. Everybody is taught to worship death and destruction. Building something for constructive purposes, it's not exciting at all.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares anything about that. Nobody wants to look at a TV series about people doing something that's constructive.
Mm-hmm.
Books are about non-constructive activity. Most of them that really sell and have to do with the supreme form of non-constructive activity, people killing people. That's considered fun, entertainment, recreation. Comic books are all about killing people, people killing people. Otherwise, well, they come in second, third, fourth place. But most of the fun got to be about people killing people in the system of white supremacy.
Okay.
It can be expected. Yes, you can. All this summer you can expect the death rate to go up, particularly in gatherings. Black people don't know what to do with each other if they assemble in huge crowds. They look at each other, and the speakers are going, and the people are up on the stage and doing whatever they do on the stage. But, hey, we've had 3 of these already and haven't had no shooting. Time to get the shooting done now. Oh, yeah. Hey, we can't go through summer without this. Got to be a death count. People running, scattering, screaming, falling down. It's coming. So the code says don't assemble anywhere when you think that this is not going to end constructively.
Yes, sir.
Depart those premises immediately.
Mm-hmm. All righty. You've been listening to the thoughts and expressions of Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here on the CRCS, the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Again, when you call in and to this number, which is 516-453-9921, make sure that you give your name to the call screener so that I can properly identify you. And if you are a first-time caller, be sure to mention that, and we have something set up special for that. Get into the chat room if you'd like. It's getting heated in there. Go to blogtalkradio.com, and you want to click on the programs, and you get the Produced Justice show. And then when you click on that, the chat room is available, and you can get into that. And it is get in there, and it's something. It was something last week. All right, Mr. Fuller. Let's see here. Let's do this. Let's read this. This comes from, so who is this? Nawab. Says this, Mr. Fuller, please realize that when some of us suggested making health the 10th category / area of human activity, that it really should be medicine or medical instead. Medicine should be that 10th category if you ever decided to add another one, which I know you won't at this point. But the white supremacist uses the medical industry in nefarious ways against the non-white / black population and has done so historically. That is not the same as health, which can be conveniently put under the economics umbrella. Medicine is its own separate category, just as education, politics, labor, law, religion, and entertainment are. And I know when Mr. Bobby finishes reading my VGQ, you will say all 9 areas of activity intersect and overlap each other. And I see what you mean, but just wanted to make it known to you, Mr. Bobby, and the listening audience to use medicine instead of referring to the unofficial 10th area of human activity. Thank you, Brother Jay. Mr. Fuller, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have said repeatedly for decades, the individual person is called the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. That's based on the title of my book. And it's united independent, meaning you're united, or should be, all of the people of the planet, in trying to produce a product called justice and correctness, and ultimately, universal man, universal woman, in the best possible relationships worldwide than people could ever have in all areas of activity. And I just came up with the 9 areas of activity, and I cut it off at a certain point, simply because I said that people could have 50 areas of activity if they want to. That's why I call it the United Independent Code. It's a guide So people don't have to ask for permission, the victims of white supremacy. The problems of the world have not been solved, the basic problems. Like I just talked about, all the killing. You don't have mental health until all of the killing stops. And you're not going to have the end of the killing in the system of white supremacy, when the system of white supremacy is designed to worship people killing people. That's a religion. That's a part of the system of white supremacy. You can't have the system of white supremacy without not only people killing people, but people enjoying, making entertainment, the major form of entertainment, causing the death of people. That goes with the system of racism itself. Death worshippers. They look at what we call life with absolute contempt. So now, in this system, you can say, well, no, I'm not going to use the term medicine, health, or medicine. I'll use the term medicine or health, or not only that, I got about 17 more terms that I'm going to use. And you can do that as an individual person if it does what? If it helps you to do anything that is of constructive value. That's what the textbook is about. It's a guide. It's not like these are absolutes that everybody has to be in lockstep with. In fact, you choose what works for you in a constructive manner. It produces what? Constructive results, regardless of what the person down the block is doing. That's why it's called the United Independent System. It compensates for United Independent Compensatory Code System concept, and it compensates for what problems you have that haven't been solved. So it's just about problem solving. And you can use algebra to solve a problem. You can use mathematics to solve a problem. Algebra is a form of mathematics. It's all calculations. Or you want to use geometry. These are different categories of what? Of calculating. So one person will say, well, geometry works for me. That's my field. And another person says, well, geometry is something I dabble in, but calculus works for me. And then another person says, well, just plain old arithmetic works for me. Now, these are different categories of what you might call making calculations about how to figure things out, how to get things done. They got different labels. And they can probably add, a lot of people will say, well, have you ever heard of another type of way to calculate? It might be 17 different ways. Not what we're familiar with. Calculus, arithmetic, algebra, geometry. These are terms that have to do with what we call figuring things out, usually associated with numbers. But someone might say that, hey, that's kindergarten stuff. That's not even a good beginning. It's at least 17 categories of how to figure things out that the astronauts use, that other people never even heard of. And so from somebody, I don't know. But these are just words to get things done. That's the thing to concentrate on. Getting something done that produces what? A constructive result. That's all that you should think about. And you can call it whatever you want to call it. I want to say this, because people keep getting hung up on just, well, what did Neely Fuller say? Check with Neely Fuller again on this. Get back to him. It's not what Neely Fuller means. All you do is just do whatever works, and then you pass that on. If it works, pass it on to somebody who is struggling with the same problem, because it's all about doing one thing, problem solving.
Yes, sir.
In the most constructive manner. That's what everything that I've written and everything that I'm saying should be written all over the world, every minute of every day. If anybody writes anything or gives out any kind of guide or instructions on anything, it should produce what? A constructive result. Everything that doesn't produce a constructive result should be done away with. I don't care what you call it.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for answering that question. Let's take a little break here so we can be uninterrupted. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, just dial 516-453-9921. Make sure you press the number 1 button if you have a question or comment. Please make it short, and we can proceed on with the show. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. And, of course, if you would like to get into the fabulous chat room, and I mean the temperature is rising in that bad boy, all you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com, click on the shows, and you will have the Produced Justice Show or programs, whatever that icon says up there. Click on that bad boy, and when you do that, the chat room will become available. And you can get in there, and man, oh man, better bring your boots with you, because it's hot in there. But those are the ways to get in contact with the program. Any announcements and anything or any information that we may not have or you don't understand, you can also go to ProduceJustice.com, not only for the books but past shows and all the latest information as we combat the system of white supremacy, which is racism, and replace it with justice. Go to the phone lines. Unappreciated black third grade teacher, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning. Thank you. Last week, I was fortunate to ask Mr. Fuller a question about education. Unfortunately, the shootings in Texas happened less than 3 hours later. The question is, what advice would you give someone to codify the behavior of people, to give people the chance to thrive or survive in the concept that we call school, within the concept that we call America?
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Well, you just do the best you can with what they give you to work with, because we're not only just in school and in the system of white supremacy, but the system of white supremacy is a prison. A prison for whom? It's a prison camp. Also, you can call it a death camp for people of color. That's what the system of white supremacy is. So you do the best you can according to the instructions of the whom? Prison masters. If you're a prisoner of war, and if you're a person who is classified as non-white on planet Earth, you are, according to the evidence and according to the compensatory code, a prisoner of war. You're already taken into captivity if you're a person who is classified as non-white, black, brown, red, yellow, non-white. You were born in prison. All of the people who are classified as non-white were born in prison, who are breathing now on planet Earth. And it's been that way since the beginning of the system of white supremacy. Now, I don't know when it began. A lot of people say 500 years ago. A lot of people say 600. A lot of people say, I think most people have centered somewhere around in the neighborhood of 2,000 years. That's a long-running show. The system of white supremacy has existed for at least 2,000 years on the planet, going back to the time of what many people call biblical times, or the time that Jesus was born. That's roughly around 2,000 years. And that the system has been at least around that long, and many people, not most, say way before then, as many as 6,000. That's usually what it rounds out as being, according to many scholars. 6,000 years of white supremacy, of white people dominating and mistreating people of color. 6,000 years. That's a long time for anybody to get highly trained in what racism is about. That covers 6,000 years. That's all of the incidents, day by day, all of the people who are killed, all of the people who are mistreated. So in answer to the question, we are born in the system that's been around at least, at the minimum, 400 years in the northwestern hemisphere and 6,000 years in the minds of most scholars, as they say, 600 years rather, 2,000 tops. Well, and in answer to the question, you're going to a school that's in the prison camp where you learn how to be a model prisoner. That's what you learn in the system of white supremacy. If you're a person who is classified as black, you learn how to be a model prisoner, to go along with whatever is in place. And what is in place is the only government on the planet Earth here in May of 2022 is the system of white supremacy. It's a world government. So in answer to the question, you go along with the instructions that they give you to try to survive, because you just might get shot in there. And you teach your offspring. Now, when you go to school, you take your lunch bucket and you take whatever you can take and whatnot. And when you get in there, you follow the instructions about if you hear some strange sounds that sounds anything like gunfire, a car backfiring or something like that. I mean, you figure out from day one where you're going to go or where you're going to hide as best you can if they will allow you to do so. They meaning the prison masters, which indirectly means the white supremacists. And that's the best all of us can do. If I go to the grocery store, I have to go to the store. I'm no longer in what you call a school setting. But I have to go places. And in a war, and the white supremacists are always making war against people of color. And in a war, you expect a bullet to come from everywhere, anywhere. Because the whole world is a battlefield in the system of white supremacy. There's no such thing as peace, except for themselves when they want it. But every now and then they get real bored if there's not some killing going on. That's the white supremacist mentality. So they'll kill each other for fun and think nothing of it. I mean, it makes good conversation. They can't stand peace and don't want anybody else to stand it either.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, unappreciated black third grade teacher from Ohio. You know the drill. Don't be a stranger. Let's go to Milwaukee. Corey, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Greetings, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller.
Greetings, sir.
My question is, when as a victim of white supremacy, when a fellow, elder kin, is close to death, say the doctor, for example, says they have 3 days left, what is the codified thing for the other person to do in the situation?
Yeah, what is the codified thing to do in what situation?
If an elder kin of yours, a fellow non-white elder kin of yours, is close to death, what is the codified thing that we should do in providing constructive help, or what is the response that we do, that we take?
If the person is close to death?
Yes.
Oh, you help them as best you can. That's rock solid code. 2 things. You try to guarantee that nobody's mistreated, and you try to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help that you can provide or somebody else can provide in your behalf for the person who needs that help the most. And that's the only thing that you can do. It's nothing else. You just do the best you can. Do the best you can to make the person comfortable on their transition. You see, you have to look forward. You have to look at death like something that's the other end of coming into the world, what we call the beginning of life. And we have been kind of trained to mourn people when they leave what we call this existence, this life. But when the people are born, we are joyous. But this is a result of how we have been trained. We didn't have anything to do with either one of it unless you had something to do with terminating a person after they get here, which is what you avoid doing. But people come here because whatever created the universe decided that this person or this creature, this animal, this leaf on a tree will come here when whatever creates people and leaves on trees and birds and bees, whatever created them. You have to look at it, will really ultimately decide when there will be a departure. So you really have nothing to do with it, except, like I said, do what you can do to make a person comfortable. I'm getting up there myself in that age bracket, you might say. I am at age 92 myself, sitting here talking to you. But in 10 years, it's not likely I will be doing this. And I understand that. And it might happen today. It could happen right this minute. But even if it happened like it's happening somewhere right now for somebody, a doctor is walking out into a hall and saying to someone right this minute, well, the child was born 30 minutes ago. but we ran into some complications. And we've been working with the mother and the child, but the child didn't survive. Somebody is being told that right this minute as we talk. The child was born 30 minutes ago. It was here for 30 minutes. Now that child is gone. It was here for 30 minutes. Someone told me some years ago the lifespan of what they call the house sparrow, that's a very small bird, the one we usually see more than any other bird, at least where I am and where I've been. A little small brown bird is what a species that they call the house sparrow, very common, has a lifespan, predictable lifespan, someone told me several years ago, of 5 years. I'm saying that's the normal lifespan of a house sparrow, 5 years. In 5 years, that bird is old. That bird is way overdue. If it goes 6 or 7 years, it's way overdue for leaving this earth. Not supposed to last for 5 years. That's standard. The house sparrow, I've been told that. Then there are other animals that are here like forever. I mean, they get way up in age unless somebody kills them. I forgot some of the species, the ages that I've been told about. Elephants, rhinoceros, rhinos, crocodiles. If they're not bothered or somebody doesn't trap them or kill them, they have a kind of a stretched out lifespan. So I understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with people. So if you're talking about mourning, you don't mourn or rejoice, really, because it's all a gift. That's how you look at it. It's a gift. 5 minutes is a gift. So what you have is a memory of the person. And you are supposed to please yourself with the memory of the person or the pet if it's an animal. A lot of people have elaborate funerals for their house pet or for their dog. Because they'll say, well, yes, a lot of dogs that are just like that, that look like that. But that, they weren't, that wasn't Rex. That wasn't my dog. I've seen a lot of dogs that look like him, but it's not my dog. I was close to my dog. My dog knew me, and I knew my dog. It's the same with people. People are dying even as we are talking and listening now. But you're not mourning them because you don't know them. That's the major difference. In answer to your question, I hope.
Mm-hmm. All right.
But what you have is the memory.
Mm-hmm.
And you try to remember all of the pleasant things. Because that's all you really have when you leave this earth anyway. You're not taking nothing. You're not taking no suitcase or nothing.
Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Thank you, Corey, for your call. Let's see here. 516-453-9921 is the number to get in contact with the show so that you may ask Mr. Fuller a question. If you're a first-time caller, please let that be known to the call screener so that we can enter you into our special program for first-time callers. Mr. Fuller, this is the time that we have set aside for you to speak about your book before we go to another call and another Gmailer. So let's speak about your book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept.
Yeah, the things that I'm talking about, a lot of them are in the book about death, and I think it's in there somewhere, something about it. They talk about a lot of death, because in the system of white supremacy, like I said earlier, the white supremacists more than anybody are death. They worship death. I mean, they bathe in it. They believe in bloodshed, hanging people, and burning them alive, and all that type of stuff. They believe in it. It's a religion. It goes with the territory. And that's what we want to get rid of, that type of mentality. And replace it with what? A system of justice and peace, where people wake up and go to bed every day thinking about how they can help the person that needs help the most, and how they can guarantee that no person is mistreated in the process. Everybody all over the planet should wake up and go to bed every night, every day, thinking along those lines. And that's what the textbook for victims of white supremacy is about, that you can get to by going to producejustice.com. We're talking about this replacement thing. You hear this word now, very prominent, replacement theory and all that. Well, some things need replacing. So the system of white supremacy, because it's so harmful when it comes to people, is very productive when it comes to things, the most productive system in recorded history, in my opinion, and according to the evidence. But it's very destructive of people, mentally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
And so the textbook for victims of white supremacy is designed to help a person, the individual person, replace that system with a system of justice, which means what? I'll repeat it again, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, no person, and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And so the textbooks are designed to help the individual person to bring that about. And you can get it by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. It's addressed to the individual victims of white supremacy.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. As the show continues with this Gmail, this comes from Mr. Jackson. It says this: Mr. Fuller, white people in Shelby County, Texas, has fabricated a myth that my great-grandfather was a Confederate soldier only to support their own white supremacy agenda. Even though they know the truth, they would rather endorse the lie in support of a Confederate narrative. Our grandfather received a pension from the U.S. government, and that was not well received in a Confederate state, so they persecuted our families in various ways. Mr. Fuller, what are your thoughts on that?
Now, who is this writing this?
This is Delbert. Delbert is writing this. He's from Texas.
And he's saying that his grandfather was a white supremacist?
Was a Confederate soldier.
A black Confederate soldier or what?
Let me go back to it. Let me see. Wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. Because
context is everything.
Yeah.
So I have to know who did what.
Okay, let me say this again. It says, let me read it again. It says, white people in Shelby County, Texas, has fabricated a myth that my great-grandfather was a Confederate soldier only to support their own white supremacy agenda. Even though they know the truth, they would rather endorse the lie in support of a Confederate narrative. Our grandfather received a pension from the U.S. government, and that was not well received in a Confederate state. So they persecuted our families in various ways. He has different websites on here for verification of that story.
So I don't get the gist of this question. Of this question, or
Okay.
was that a question? That sounds like a report of something that happened.
Yes. Yes, something did happen, and
but
apparently,
is he asking my opinion of what that is, or what?
Or just an exposure of how white supremacy is working in support of the white supremacy agenda. That's all.
Oh, in other words, that's a BGQ.
Yes.
Right. Oh, he's just making a report. Oh, I thought it was a question.
He's making a report, and he also has the sites that this story can be verified, which I'm not going to do over the air. He has three of them on there. He wasn't just making this up. This is, according to him, he wasn't just making this up. This is, if a person wanted to verify that, they could, and he gave the references for that. He was basically exposing it and wondering, what do you think about that in this system of white supremacy?
Well, I think it's just according to his report, he's making a report. So I think that if it's constructive, people should know about everything that has happened in history, if that's the question. So anything that has to do with race, racism, or counter-racism, everybody in the world should know it. Anything and everything. So if that's something he is informing us who haven't heard about it as information, then we disseminate the information or look into it and add it to our store of knowledge, and it may help to solve the problem, because the problem of what? Of racism. Because the more you know about a problem and the more you understand it, the better chance you have of solving the problem. And that's my response.
Okay, well, that's good enough. That's good enough. And I just text him to let him know your response to that. All righty, let's go to Harlem. Joe, get ready, baby. Get ready, Joe. Get ready, Joe. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Wait, there we go. There you go, Joe. Good morning.
Good morning. Greetings, Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby.
Yes, sir.
I would like to first apologize to Mr. Fuller. Last week, I had mentioned that he didn't answer my question, which was about it was a statement by another attempting counter-racist who made a statement. Said the statement goes, the worldwide system of racism, white supremacy does not go away when white people go away. And I said Mr. Fuller didn't answer my question, and I listened to the replay, and he actually did. So I just want to apologize to Mr. Fuller about that. When I spoke to the person who wrote this, or tweeted this, made this post, he explained to me, and he's a long-time listener of Mr. Fuller too as well. He probably don't listen to him now, but he's been under Mr. Fuller milk some time for the past. Anyway, he said that this whole statement is more about not getting rid of white people, but getting rid of the system. We shouldn't be focused on trying to get rid of white people disappearing. We should be focused on ridding the system of racism or injustice with a system of justice. And that's what he meant by the statement he was saying, that the worldwide system of race and white supremacy does not go away when white people go away. And I just want to make that statement and bring his clarity to that. And I mean, if what's your thoughts, Mr. Fuller, if you don't mind me asking? On his explanation. On his explanation that it's not about getting rid of white people. It's about getting rid of the system of racism, the system of injustice.
Correct. I keep emphasizing. This is how you keep it in mind. The aim is of everything that Neely Fuller says about race, racism, and counter-racism, which is what I do on this program and what I do in the books. Just keep the goal in mind, the production of a thing called justice. And what does that mean? Just to keep these two things in mind. Guaranteeing that nobody is mistreated. That's number one. Number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Each and every day, each and every minute, everywhere in the known universe, without fail. Those two things, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, white or non-white, short, tall, babies, old people, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. Number one. Number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, that last part may need a little more explanation. People usually understand what mistreatment is. That takes care of the first part. But the second part, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, everybody, every day, all over the planet Earth, needs some type of help. Every minute of every day, you need help of some type from somebody. But then there is a person out of 10 people in a room. There is one person in there, in that room of 10 people, that needs more help than the other 9. So you always start with the person that needs the most help, even in a room of 10 people. Find out whether it's Mary or Sally or John or Kamatha or Kenyatta. Hold up your hand. Who needs help in here? There's 10 of you in here. Who needs help? Everybody's hand goes up because everybody needs some type of help every day, even if it's just the help of finding out what time the next bus leaves. That's help. You ask somebody. When you ask questions, questions are about needing help. People ask questions all day long, everywhere, all over the planet. So you give the most constructive help. But you give the most constructive help to the person who needs the most constructive help. And then you work back. It might turn out to be person number 7 who needs the most constructive help out of the 10. And then you do what? From number 7, you find out, okay, who needs the most help and whatever help they need. And by the people telling you the help that they need, the 10 people in that room, you find out who needs the most help first. That's who you start with. And then you work back until you get to the person who needs the least help. One person may have an arm that's bleeding. That person needs help right away. You stop the bleeding. And then the other person just wants to know where the lunchroom is. So you don't stop to talk to the person about the lunchroom when you're helping the person who is bleeding to death.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Very simple. And you carry that principle through all over the planet. The white supremacists are opposed to anything that looks like that, even though they'll give a lot of lip service to it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Joe has dropped, but thank you, Mr. Fuller. And that concludes the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. If you have to go, hopefully you will tune in next week or even call in. But for those of you who are going to stay, we have a full hour to go on the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., which will commence in 7 seconds. Thank you for listening. Alrighty, welcome to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host. My name is Mr. Bobby. And if you would like to call in to the show, as Mr. Terrence has done, all you have to do is call 516-453-9921. Please be sure to give your name to the call screener so that I can give you the proper introduction. And if you are a first-time caller, just give that your name also to the call screener, and then we got a special program just for you so that you can get on and you can be heard by Mr. Fuller so that he may address your question. You can also join, or rather contact me by the Gmail, and it is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Now, it may not be read today. Probably it will not be read, but at some point in time it will be read, as the ones that I've been reading today have been past Gmails that I finally got to. And then I will, text you back and inform you the date and the time that your Gmail is read. So don't think that it goes in here and it's ignored. It's not. It's not ignored at all. It's just stacked up, and then we have time like we appear to have today, and we can get that in there, and that's good. Okay, where are my California people at? They haven't joined in yet. You can also join the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com, and then you want to click on programs, and this is the or shows. This is the Produced Justice show or program. You click on that, and then an icon will come up where you can join the chat room. Now, I'm just going to tell you, when you go in there, come on now, don't play, because the chatters are very skillful at the things that they do, and they follow the code. I would say this, most of them, the majority of them, follow the code precisely. They own it. Those that don't, well, you can tell who does and then who doesn't. But anyway, don't play when you go into the chat room, because they will expose you, or you actually expose yourself. But anyway, that's how you get in there and have some lively discussions in there. So do that. Okay. All the material that you can that you hear on this program can be obtained by going to ProduceJustice.com. Later on in this hour, Mr. Fuller will talk again about his book. And if you missed the opening statement that Mr. Fuller has made, it's called Thoughts and Expressions from the Mind of Neely Fuller Jr. That's in the first hour. And you can pick that up because the program is repeated. Okay, with that being said, let's go to Terrence. Terrence, let me see if I can get you in here. You are there. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. We call from Tennessee. We got good weather down here, so I hope everything is beautiful where you are. So I'm calling to turn in my homework, as I try to do. So here's my CRT: convicted, revealed, and now terrified.
Okay.
I went a little further with the NAACP, which is National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And so I think it could mean new attitudes for the advancement of coded people. Now, my very last one, this is a touchy one, so I'm going to be careful with this one. So I'm going to give you the words. Led gradually towards being quailed. Led gradually backwards towards quelling.
And so quelling means when you're forcibly suppressed and subdued, led gradually backwards towards quelling. And I'll let the chat people figure that one out. And lastly, Mr. Fuller, this is graduation season. People are getting educated, and what you said about education. If you were a speaker at a graduation, what would you tell our graduates, the class of 2022?
I would tell them to become familiar with the system of white supremacy as I have described it in my textbooks, as a continuation of their quote-unquote education. Because if you don't understand the system of white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else in your education will confuse you. And so I don't think that Neely Fuller's textbooks are used in any major or most major settings of schools or any of the other anti-counter-racist books that are designed to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Most schools do not have that as a part of their main curricula for white and non-white people, on account of all the controversy, from what I've heard, about CRT. And so that means that a lot of people are graduating into a world that is all a part of the world where they're just so-called leaving, but they were just in a prison part, a cell part of the prison of the system of white supremacy when they were in what they call a school. So it's just like walking out of one part of the prison system into another part of the prison system, since it's all the system of white supremacy, and carrying out the assignments that the white supremacists have all laid out for you. And for most black males, it's servitude at a minimum income level where you don't accumulate anything except grief or death. And be aware, like I said at the beginning of this explanation, be aware that you're in the system of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the system of white supremacy, the destiny of every non-white person is to be miserable. And so you look forward to that. That's what they have laid out for you. And to do non-constructive things. So you concentrate on trying to be as constructive as you possibly can be. And move to the next phase of what they will allow you to move in, directly or indirectly, to kind of put yourself in the best position where you can be more effective in replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice.
Yes, sir.
Now, that's what I consider to be my assignment, and I say that should be the assignment. I call it in capital letters in the textbook, the assignment of every person classified as non-white on the planet, and that is to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. That should be your assignment. You should look at your reason for being born as being your assignment. Why?
Yes, sir.
Because it's the most troublesome system among the people of this planet. And you're going to have this problem, and you can't run away from it. It's the problem of the entire planet. Racism is the problem. Every problem comes from it. That thing called white supremacy is the cause of all of the other problems. And that statement is either true or false. And that's what you leave one institution to go to another institution, if you want to use the word institution, but it's all the system of white supremacy. If you're on planet Earth,
yes, sir.
All of it.
All righty, Terrence. Thank you so much for your loyal listenership. Appreciate you, brother. Listen, when you call in, when you call in, please give your name to the call screener so that I can introduce you. Even though my icon says your hand is up, give your name to the call screener so I can give you the introduction. Mr. Fuller, you have spoken this many times, but for those that are new to the program and for those who are just listening, what is the difference between justice and compensatory justice? Or is there a difference?
Same thing. It's just a modifier because you don't have it. Compensatory means you're making up for something that's missing. That's what the word compensation means, unemployment compensation. Why? You're missing a regular paycheck because you lost your job. You're unemployed, as they say. So they give you some compensation until you can get your job back or another one. And so compensatory justice, this means justice doesn't exist. You can't have justice and white supremacy on the same planet at the same time. If you have white supremacy, you can't have justice. If you have justice, you can't have white supremacy. Why? The system of white supremacy is designed to mistreat people. It's designed to do that. And you cannot have justice if you're going to mistreat people, period. So here on planet Earth, justice does not exist any place. Why? Because the system of white supremacy exists every place. That's the equation. So that's the difference. The difference is no difference. The word compensatory just means you're making up by trying to do something constructive. You're making up for the lack of things that should be done that will have constructive results.
Is that what you did when you examined the word justice?
Absolutely. And also I examined the word compensatory before I said compensatory justice, meaning justice doesn't exist. So anytime you do anything constructive, you are helping to dismantle the system of white supremacy, and that will compensate as you go along, because everything you do is compensatory. When you bat your eyes, that's compensatory. I don't know how many times I've batted my eyes since I've been here on planet Earth, but I bat my eyes because my eyes are engineered to do what you call batting all day long, because it gives your eyes, I think, the whole point for your eyes batting is to give your eyes relief. That's a compensatory action. If I take one step, that's a compensatory step. If I move from the table to the chair, that's compensatory. Meaning what? I'm making up for what's missing. What's missing? I'm not in the chair. So I go to the chair. That's a compensatory action in order to get to the chair. I go from the table to the chair. And that going from the table to the chair is a compensatory act. Once I arrive at the chair, I have compensated for what? Not being in the chair. So you replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. That's the overall concept.
Yes, sir. Okay. Now, recently, a manager of a major league professional baseball team has made a decision not to come out of the locker room during the playing of the national anthem and, you know, the flag and all that stuff, you know, right there. He's been somewhat criticized, you know, for that. And I've heard here a lot of people are confused or stand up, support this flag or take your hat off and all this other kind of stuff. I don't think that they are aware of the universal pledge. But you've come up with a universal pledge, and for those who haven't heard that, could you say the universal pledge and then the meaning behind that and how that will really end the controversy of pledging your allegiance to a flag or whatever they're doing?
Well, that's what I invented it for, to compensate for as best I could, so that people, if they try to criticize it, they come up empty. And here is the compensatory universal flag pledge. I came up with it about 1994, I think. I've kind of forgotten. It goes kind of way back. It took me about a year to come up with that pledge. And I say, here it goes. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. I'm going to say that again. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. That's the compensatory universal pledge. Now, why did I give it that title? It's because you can say that pledge in the presence of any flag anywhere on the planet at any time. And first of all, you will be telling the truth, and it's a constructive pledge. Other pledges are highly controversial, or maybe. Certainly the one that they use in the Northwestern Hemisphere for what they call the American flag is controversial. The Confederate, so-called Confederate flag of the Southern states is greatly controversial, and it set off a firestorm of arguments and going back and forth. Now, the compensatory universal flag, according to the code, is supposed to evaporate all of that controversy. Now, I can't tell the coach what to do and all like that. That's not what I'm supposed to do according to the code. That would be a code violation. Yeah. But I would suggest that if he asks me, what should he do? Should he stay in the locker room? I say, well, does that provide the most constructive result that you're looking for? Well, if it does, then he could continue doing that. But if he wants to try it, he can just walk out on the field, and if they're singing, sometimes they're not taking the pledge to the flag, or somebody, you know, is reading the pledge. That's them. You can stand up or sit down or do whatever. But you can say that I sat down, but I did take the pledge. I was, because there are people who are in wheelchairs, so they can't say anything about that. So you think of everything. That's the compensatory way. You think of everything. Because somebody say, well, you didn't stand. They say, well, this fellow sitting next to me, he didn't stand either because he's in a wheelchair. And he said he's a veteran. And so you're going to say he's dishonoring the flag? Say, well, there's nothing wrong with your legs and all like that. I say, but my legs got nothing to do with it. It's what I'm thinking and whether or not I'm taking the pledge. And if you want to hear my pledge, I'll give it to you. I do at all times relate to that flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. Now, what have I done that's incorrect? What have I done that's controversial? I don't see any controversy. And if you do, tell me what it is. What did I do that I shouldn't have done? Well, you didn't stand. Well, I told you why I didn't stand. I'm tired. And the fellow sitting next to me, he was shot in the abdomen in World War II, he said, in France. So he can't walk. Yeah, but you can walk. Yeah, but just because I can walk, what does that have to do with it? What does that have to do with me and my relationships? I'm asking a question, sir, ma'am. What does that have to do with me and my relationship with the flag? And then don't interfere with them when they give their answer. Just be ready with your next question.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As always, that's the codified way. Don't ever interfere with a person's answer. That's, you ask them for their answer. They give you their answer. Then you can, if you're going to say anything at all, you've already received their answer. But if you say anything at all, have another question ready. And my question would be, what did I do that's incorrect?
And let them tell you what you did.
And let them tell me what I did that was incorrect. Because I said I fulfilled the mission to the flag. Me and the flag have no problem at all. Because I relate to that flag the exact same way that that flag relates to me. And I got evidence of it.
Mm-hmm.
And let them deal with that. If you don't believe it, try it. It'll work every time. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. It ain't going to get no better than that.
Mm-hmm.
You do that and see what the reaction is going to be. And be ready with the next question. Don't argue about their answer. Just be ready with the next question. And the next logical question, if they're still criticizing you, is say, what did I do that's incorrect, sir?
Oh, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty.
And just see what happens.
See what happens. Okay. Let's go to New York. By the way, New York, you're on that list of the frequent callers, so that's good. Darnell, get ready. I'm getting ready to see if I can cue you in. And you are cued in. Go ahead, Darnell. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Fuller, my question today is, it seems like the system of white supremacy is getting stronger day by day. According to the code, what's continuing to give it strength?
According to the code, what?
What's continuing to give the system of white supremacy strength?
What's continued to be?
What's continuing to give the system of white supremacy strength?
My hearing is actually not too good. You might have to repeat slowly and emphasize your words or something. I'm missing something here.
The system of white supremacy, what is giving it the strength to keep going?
What is, say it slowly.
What
is
giving the
system of white supremacy
strength.
Strength. Spell it.
Strength,
no,
Mr.
strength.
Fuller. He said strength, giving it strength.
Like making it strong.
Mm-hmm.
Like making it strong.
Oh, what is it that gives the system of white supremacy strength?
Yes, sir.
The ideology of white supremacy. That's his greatest strength. That if you're white, you have a duty to dominate and mistreat people who are non-white. It's the strongest religious and political concept ever thought of. It's the strongest. It is proven to be the strongest. No religion is stronger than that. Dominating and mistreating people based on the color of the skin. No religion, no political system, no economic system, no system of labor or law has surpassed that in strength. Just that formula. If you're white, you have a duty, not an option, to dominate and mistreat anybody and everybody who is classified as non-white in every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. You have a duty as a white person to do those two things: dominate and mistreat. Who? People who have color in their skin. And whoever thought up that idea, whether it's one person or a committee of people, I don't know, or when. But here in May of 2022, it is the strongest political system and the strongest religious ideology that was ever invented in the minds of the people of planet Earth. And where does it get its strength? Strictly in that ideology. Very simple. It's so simple. It's so simple. You say, I'm white, so I have a duty to dominate and mistreat people of color. For what? For what everybody wants out of existence. What every squirrel wants, every alligator, every bear. And that is what? Three things. Fun, glory, and material comfort. And whomever thought of the system of white supremacy thought up the most powerful idea in the minds of people to get those three things for people who were classified as white, who classified themselves as white. That's where they get their strength. No one has come up with anything stronger than that.
Mm-hmm.
But we are supposed to be, since that system should not exist, we do have a concept, another concept called justice. And that's guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. But you cannot do that and have that in the system of white supremacy. If you have justice, you don't have white supremacy. If you have white supremacy, you don't have justice. It's just that simple. So you have to make the concept of justice real, guaranteeing that nobody's mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help consistently. No exceptions.
Mm-hmm. All righty. You're listening to the CRCS, Counter Racist Code Show, with Mr. Neely Fuller. And we thank you for listening. You can get into the show by calling 516-453-9921. And for first-time callers, if you let the call screener know that you're a first-time caller, we have something special for you. If you have a comment, just press the number 1 button and give your name to the call screener, and that'll help me out to pronounce your name. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And you can also get into the chat room by going to Blog Talk Radio, and you want to make sure that you hit programs, and the Produced Justice show will come up. Hit that, and then there's an icon where you can hit chat and get into the chat room and join the conversation in there. Hey, no name calling in there, okay? Okay, follow the code. Follow the code. All righty. So we got about 29 minutes to go on today's program. Let me see here. Okay. Let's go to a Gmail. And Black Speak is saying this to Mr. Fuller. He says, Mr. Fuller, we frequently hear mostly blacks making reference to, quote, black and brown, end of quote, for black people and Latinos when it comes to mistreatment and discrimination. Since some Latinos classify themselves as white, Mr. Fuller, is it a good idea for blacks to include Latinos as allies for replacing racism, white supremacy with justice?
Well, according to the code, I'll just say what the code says. Non-white. You have 3 categories of people on the planet when you start talking about race, racism, or counter-racism. Just 3. White, non-white, and white supremacists. But you have to be white in order to be a white supremacist. So, since all problems are solved through the process of what? Questions and answers. Every problem in the known universe. You ask a person, not if they're Latino or Hispanic or anything, Democrat, Republican, you say, are you white? Yes or no? That's the codified procedure. Are you white? And the person say, well, I'm Hispanic. That's not the question, sir, ma'am. Are you white? And the code says, if you are white, it's duty bound if you are a victim of white supremacy. If you're a victim of white supremacy, you're supposed to suspect that everybody who is white, who is able to practice racism, probably is one. Now, it's not personal, it's business. Why? Because if you're able to practice white supremacy and you're not a white supremacist, there's no way in the system of white supremacy or a victim of white supremacy to know whether you are or are not a white supremacist. See, just because you're white and you're born white doesn't say that you're automatically a white supremacist, but you should be suspected of being one until you prove that you are not. Prove that you are not. Prove it to whom? To the victim. Every victim? Yes. Why? Where's the logic here? Where's the justice? Because there's no other way to find out. And each individual has to find out for him or herself if a particular white person is or is not a white supremacist. Why? Because there's no master list, as far as I know, of who is or who is not a white supremacist among the white people of planet Earth. No one has called it to my attention that somewhere there's a list of that will tell all non-white people who is a white supremacist and who is not. I don't know of such a list.
Yes, sir.
So that means that in a system of white supremacy, any white person who is able to be a white supremacist can be and should be suspected of being one in a system of white supremacy, when that is the rule and government of the entire planet. So you can always ask a person, first of all, are you white? And then you can ask another question. If the person says, well, why are you asking me that? You say, well, if you're white, you could be a white supremacist. And I am duty-bound as a victim of white supremacy to suspect that you most likely are one. Why? Because in the system of white supremacy, white people who are white supremacists see to it. Their job is to guarantee that other white people, other than themselves, are also white supremacists.
Okay. All right, that answers that question. Okay, let's travel out to, I guess, your born state, Mr. Fuller, Oklahoma. Get ready, Dre. Let me see if I can get you in here. Okay, it's Buffer. Okay, Dre, I got you on. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
All right. Good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. My question is, I know that you advocate that we, have no contact, no conflict, and that is a profound idea. But what about those situations where we don't have a choice but to have contact with other people? For instance, let's say we at the grocery store and I'm walking past somebody and somebody sold the bumps, or somebody steps on my shoe. And, historically, black people have, slaughtered each other over stuff like that. How will we handle situations like that?
Oh, that happens to me. I mean, I'm toddling along and sometimes, in a narrow space, and the code says what? Always be courteous. Never be discourteous in any circumstance. I immediately apologize. Anybody, white or non-white. So you're courteous to all people, all the time, maximum. The code says you never let anyone be more courteous than you. In any setting, if it's 50 people in a setting, you go in with your mind set according to the code. If you elect to choose that as being a part of your code, it's all your choice. I'm not going to let nobody in here. There's 50 people in this room. Nobody is going to be more courteous than me. I'm going to out-courteous everybody in every setting. I ain't going to never let nobody be more courteous than me. So you bump up against somebody or step on somebody's foot, you say, oh, I apologize. I didn't see you, sir. I didn't, ma'am, I stumbled into you. I apologize for that. I had no intention of being of any harm. And if the person curses and all, watch where you blankety blank going. You MF. All right. And so what you do, you apologize. And you don't bristle up anything. You don't react to their reaction. That's your code. That's why we need a code. We need a code for everything. A code that does what? Always produces the most constructive result. You're not going to, produce a constructive result by saying, now I apologize to you. Now if you want to get it on, we can do that too. See, that's usually the ghetto way. Ghetto ways don't work. They really don't.
Yes, sir.
They might work to get you apart in show business or something like that. If somebody likes the song that you're singing or something. Somebody meaning somebody white. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But even then, if you notice, people who started off with nothing but in the entertainment field, the ghetto way of expressing themselves. Well, a little later on, they kind of calmed down. Next thing you know, they got them a part in a serial or something like that, or they on Broadway doing a show. And they kind of modify that. They don't come across with what they started off with. And for a very logical reason. Ghetto works very well in ghetto. Doesn't work very well no place else. That's why people who are wedded, black people who are wedded to drive-by shootings and all like that, they are very particular about where they have them. And they make sure of where they are when they decide to do a drive-by.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
People who are wedded to the ghetto way, they make sure they're in the ghetto and that they ain't going to hurt nobody who is white. They will make sure of that.
True that. Thank you, Dre, from Oklahoma. VGQ from Black Tony says this: Fuller is a modern-day prophet backed up by the Holy Scriptures. Black Tony. With that being said, whoa, somebody went off the screen here. Who was that went off the screen there? Oh, wow. Okay, they went off the screen. Okay. If you can get those back, call screener, maybe I can get them back in, or did I do something wrong here? Anyway. Okay. Okay, there you go. Okay. Adam. See if I can get you in here, Adam. Oh, yeah, on the left coast, British Columbia. Adam, BC. Adam, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Yes, okay. Good morning, gentlemen. I have one quick question. I just want to know if Mr. Fuller's ever heard of the law of attraction, and if he has, where does that play in a system of white supremacy?
Okay.
I've heard of the law of attraction, but I've forgotten what it is.
What is it, Adam?
Oh, well, from my understanding, it's a universal law. Like there's numerous laws, like cause and effect being one of them. But like karma, I guess. I just wanted to get your opinion on it. Like I don't really know too much.
I don't know what it is.
So.
I've heard of it.
Nope.
And somebody told me what it was, but I forgot.
Okay, let me see if I can.
I didn't come up with the law. That's not in my word guide or anything. I didn't come up with that. But I have heard that expression, and it is whomever came up with the expression, and I'm sure it's written down somewhere. It's been around. I've heard of it. So somebody might have wrote it down.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it says in whomever invented the term, people who invent terms should explain them, and they usually do. But whatever the law of attraction is, that's what it is. You just look it up. Encyclopedias may have them. What is the law of attraction? And whatever it says it is, that's what it is.
Okay. I just looked it up. It says this: in the New Thought spiritual movement, the law of attraction is a pseudoscience based on the belief that positive or negative thoughts bring positive or negative experience into a person's life. Now, that was what Wikipedia had mentioned. The belief is based on the idea that people and their thoughts are made from, quote, pure energy, end of quote, and that a process of like energy attracting like energy exists through which a person can improve their health, wealth, and personal relationships. Now, that came from Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mike, am I still on the air?
Yeah, you're still on. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I see. I just wanted to know where that played at in the system of white supremacy.
I don't know. I haven't thought of it. But I don't. But the system of white supremacy itself is thought, speech, and action. So to counter this system, you come up with whatever is effective and produces constructive results as a result of doing and saying those things will best help to get rid of the system of white supremacy. If you're asking me how that law of attraction would fit the codified process, well, if you need it and you can find out some way to use it to help to produce justice, then use that definition of what that is. I don't have to adapt it, or I might if I looked into it, but it's all a matter of what works. See, words of any kind, an assembly of words, they are just tools. Tools for doing what? For whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
So you just pick out words that encyclopedias have, my goodness, a massive amount of words. And I've seen dictionaries that actually you had to roll them around on wheels. And then I've seen, and I do have dictionaries that I can carry in my hand. I've even had dictionaries that were pocket dictionaries, but they didn't have all the words in them that are in those words I've seen, that you actually have to have that dictionary. You can't lift it. You have to roll it around on a platform. I've seen those in libraries, mostly. And so you can just pick out words are nothing but tools. You just pick out the tools that will do the job that you think ought to be done, as long as it produces what? Constructive results.
Constructive results. Yes, sir.
That's it.
Okay. As we approach the conclusion of this show, let me do this. Let's see here. There we go. This is from Mr. Young. Says this: Mr. Fuller, do you have any thoughts on what percentage of non-white people in the known universe have to follow a counter-racist code in order to replace the global system of racism, white supremacy, and replace it with a system of justice?
No, I don't. If I understood the question.
I don't think you did. Yeah,
no, I don't. I don't have a percentage number. There's probably somebody who does have, You probably look it up somewhere. I haven't bothered. I'm just saying you either have it or you don't. You either have the system of white supremacy or you don't have it. Now, there's plenty of evidence that we still have it. It's the dominant government of the entire planet. Now, what percentages of white people practice white supremacy, I don't know. But it's enough to have the system of white supremacy being the most powerful government on the planet in May of 2022, because there is no other government, no evidence of any other government being more powerful than the system of white supremacy. That's the strongest, most powerful government on the planet in May of 2022. According to what? Neely Fuller? No. According to the evidence.
According to the evidence. Okay. All right. Let's do this as we are approaching that touchdown area of the landing strip for the end of the program. Mr. Fuller, this is the time for you to speak about this wonderful publication, your book. So the floor is yours.
Well, hopefully the publication will do better than I did on this program today. Because according to my own estimation, I was kind of ragged in some of my presentations and response. But if you go to producejustice.com, you'll probably get a better scenario, a better understanding of what the textbooks are about and what this program, Produce Justice, is about. Because we're supposed to be on this program in the process of replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Why? Because justice is better than white supremacy. And it says so right on the back of both the Word Guide and the basic textbook, Revised Expanded Edition, 2016. And also at the website of producejustice.com, there's the original 1984 edition. There's a computer design on it. And it's cheaper. And that's the original textbook. Some people wanted that, so I started putting that back in print a few years ago. But the latest edition is the 2016 edition, the Revised Expanded Edition of the 1984 original edition. But it's supposed to help the individual person on an individual day-to-day basis do what? Solve problems, presumably problems connected directly and indirectly with what we call loosely the race problem. And it solves the problems for the individual person, the individual victim, where you ask other people questions about what to do about this problem, what to do about that problem, and you don't come up with satisfactory answers, so it's called a compensatory code. So you just go to the code book and see if you can find anything in there. It may not be in there, and then it may be something that will help you to solve a problem and get the most constructive result in your problem solving. So sometimes you can solve a problem, but in the process of solving the problem, what happens? And the code book says this. You make another problem.
Broad Street in Whitehall.
So a part of the code, which is what the code book is called, solve problems without making any. Now that takes some thought. And the book is designed to help you to think your way through every problem that is likely to come up if you are a victim of white supremacy, and to then speak and act in a manner that will produce the most constructive results in solving that problem for you as an individual person. It's addressed to the individual which is why I wrote it. I thought, it's a lot of things that are said broadly that apply to black people in general. But black people in general have individual problems.
Yes.
So the book is designed to help a black person. You turn to a page and see if you can find something on that page that will help you to solve whatever problem you have within the context of the system of white supremacy. And presumably, if you consider yourself a victim of white supremacy is the cause of your problem and what you can do about it and say about it. Go to producejustice.com.
That's it. Okay. Producejustice.com. I just wanted to tell you, you were expressing that about your thoughts on how you think you did. Well, I can tell you for a fact, because I received communication from Brother Sloan down in the concept called South Africa, that they are just ecstatic about your book. And he said, in particular, the 1984 edition, they are really, they have classes down there, he told me, wrote me and told me they have classes down there, and they are teaching that. So the word is getting out. The word is getting out, and they really love it down there. He wanted me to share that with you down in the concept of South Africa. Well, Mr. Fuller, we've come to the point of the show. We got about 3 minutes left, actually 2, that we're going to give you the last word. So, Mr. Fuller, the last word.
Well, I appreciate everyone's appreciation, and I hope that the codified ideology, the codified approach, the individual, independent, codified approach will finally solve this age-old problem. That approach. We've tried just about everything else. We've tried all kinds of organizational approaches and whatnot. I'm not criticizing any attempt, but I'm saying the problem is still here. Religious leaders, every type of political leader. So what we need as a leader is the logic of the universe, maybe. We haven't been tapping into that. Cause and effect. The system of white supremacy is put together by people. So anything put together by people can be dismantled by people. That's the logic. That's been proven as universal law. Anything that people put together, people can take apart. Now, if it's put together by the creator of the universe, that's a different story altogether. All right? But anything put together by people can be taken apart by people. But you have to know how it's put together and how it functions. And so that's what this approach is about. And that's what the book is about. And I appreciate the person from South Africa, but I'm telling them it's not about Neely Fuller. It's about the logic of the universe. If they tap into that, they will have it. Everything is mathematical in the universe. The white supremacist system is mathematical. To eradicate the system, you have to replace it with something better, and that something better will have to be mathematical.
Yes.
Cause and effect. That's what mathematics is.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, all of the callers and all of you chatters. Thank you for listening. Forgive us for any mistakes that we've made. We will try to do better next time. So hopefully you'll tune in next week and be constructive on whatever you do. Mr. Fuller, last word for you.
Well, that is the last word.
All right.
Be constructive in everything that you do and say.
All right.
Be constructive.
Right. ProduceJustice.com. Have a good week, everybody.